Greetings, everybody. Thank you for joining us in the first speaker series of the third term. This speaker series is in partnership with the Parent Staff Association. My apologies for not having video. I have a bit of unstable internet connection today, so you'll only have to hear my voice. Sorry there. So as I said, this speaker series is in collaboration with the PSA, which means it will be moderated by Celiwe, who is a member of the PSA. Please feel free to drop any questions you may have in the chat box as the conversation continues. If you have any technical questions that you want to, or the technical assistance that you need, you can send me a private message or send a private message to Pernille Hansen. Just search for us in the participants section and ask us for assistance. At this point, I'd like to hand over to Celiwe.
Thank you so much, Nasmilo. I trust everybody can hear me. And as introduced, yes, my name is Celiwe Dlamini. I've been on the PSA since my daughter joined in Form 2, and this is my last year. And I'm actually very excited to have headed the digital task team, which today is presenting the inaugural Digital Talks series. So originally it was named the Responsible Digital Citizenship for a reason, but we rebranded it because it became a bit of a tongue twister into DigiTalks. I'm not going to take too much time because really the floor is for Pernille, but I just wanted to say I welcome the fact that I hope there are some students, staff, teachers, and parents on this webinar. And the reason we started the DigiTalks really was as a result of a survey that we did last year, which basically showcased two key issues. And those were the fact that people do want more knowledge about better online behavior, as well as what interventions can be made to address cyberbullying. Now, we know that with COVID, there's been a huge transition from face-to-face interaction, especially for our children and even ourselves, to online learning. And as a result, you know, with everything in life, there are pros and cons towards that. One of the cons is definitely having to get your face ready for the camera, and quite a task. But having said that, I think the aim really is just to say that we see and we note some of the parents' concerns that came up when we transitioned from face-to-face to online. And this is what prompted the PSA as a responsible body to start the DigiTalks in collaboration with the school, of course, and with assistance from the Advancement Office. So in doing the digital behavior series, one of the key aspects we wanted to uphold was a key value of Waterford, which is respect. And we've split it into, for example, the lower schools are going to have a series of 3 videos where they'll be educated on better digital citizenship. And we are also just looking at the rights of everybody as they engage on social media. So we definitely welcome your input with regards to questions, comments, suggestions, resources, any information that you'd like to share with us would be most appreciated. And I think maybe just to conclude is just to say that these webinars are really a platform to empower you with more knowledge. And we are pleased as the PSA to kick off this inaugural DigiTalk with one of our own, Dr. Pernille Hansen, who's a psychologist. She's also an alumni. As you know, this is also the Alumni Speaker Series, and she's a parent. So without wasting too much time, I'd like to hand over to Pernille. I don't know whether it's Dr. Pernille, but she's me, probably my little sister even. But I'd like to hand over to her. And really, we will entertain as much of your questions as possible. If your question is not directly answered, I'll be actually bucketing the questions, so they'll form into various themes. But do flag if your question has still not been addressed. So thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. Let's have a great evening and great conversation. Dr. Hansen, over to you.
Great, thank you so much, Pernille. Thank you for inviting me. I feel very honored to be here to kick off the DigiTalks. I also feel very humbled to be part of the alum speaker series, as I've watched a couple of them, and they've been super interesting so far, so that's exciting to be here for that. What I'm going to do tonight is, first I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself and about my professional life, and then we are going to talk more about what Pernille has introduced. We're going to look specifically at the challenges that young people and us adults also are facing now that we are really thrown in the deep end, as it were, into the online world. First of all, I just want to say welcome to, I see so many familiar faces and names also, so it's great to see there are a couple of students. There are some of my ex-students on this call, and there are, of course, lots of parents and also some of my classmates. So a little about myself. I was born here in Eswatini, in Ezulwini Valley, just up the road from where I live now. I live in Malkerns. It's almost 50 years ago that I was born. I've lived in many different countries, but have come back to Swaziland again and again. I was a student at Waterford from 1983 until 1989, and some of my teachers are actually on this call. Then I spent most of my adult life chasing the Waterford dream, really looking for a place like Waterford, moving from one country to the next, never really finding it, and eventually in 2013 I found myself back on the Waterford campus, now as a teacher. I taught life skills and psychology for 3 years, and wow, I have renewed respect for teachers. That was my first job as a teacher, and what an incredible task it is, and thank you to all the teachers that are on this call for everything that you do. I was a parent then. While I was teaching also, my son was at WK, and now I'm a parent as my daughter Sahara, who's also on the call. She's in Form 3. When I left Waterford, I started studying psychology in Cape Town. I went to UCT and did my bachelor degree there in the early 90s, and I did my honors degree at the University of the Western Cape. While I lived there in Cape Town, I was studying Xhosa, and one of the phrases that I learned during that time is a phrase that has stayed with me in my professional career. In some ways, it's really paved my path, I think. It's a very simple phrase. If there's anyone who speaks Xhosa in the call, maybe you can translate for us. The phrase is, ubomi ngumzamo. Do we have anyone that can translate for that, what that is in English?
I'll do it, I'll help you. I can see that there are no Xhosa speaking people here. My name is Loyiso. I'm an ex-student, and ubomi ngumzamo is, ubomi is life, umzamo is an endeavor. So it's a phrase that talks about the journey that you go through in life, whether it's a good journey or a bad journey, but it's a process of learning that you go into as it changes. Thanks, Pernille.
Thanks so much, Loyiso. Why did that stay with me? Well, I think training as a mental health professional, perhaps naively in the beginning of my training, I may have had ambitions of, I think originally I may have thought that my role as a psychologist when I'd finished my training was to help reduce people's problems. But this phrase, ubomi ngumzamo, as Loyiso explains, really says life is a journey, life is with difficulty. That's something that we have to accept. And it shaped me as I realized that really my role as a psychologist and in this profession is not to take people's problems away, because I can't do that, but it's really to work towards equipping people who are struggling, people who are in distress, with tools and skills and resources so that they can cope and manage those challenges that they face in their journey. I have been very influenced by working, sorry, I've been working with the concept of resilience for many years. And this is the definition of resilience that I really lean up against. And I'm just going to introduce this now. Sorry. Resilience, this is a definition written by Michael Ungar, who's really the guru within the resilience field. He describes resilience as both the capacity of individuals to navigate their way to the psychological, social, cultural, and physical resources that build and sustain their well-being. And it's also their individual and collective capacity to negotiate for these resources to be provided and experienced in culturally meaningful ways. It's important for us to remember that when we try and support other people, we have to make sure that we are supporting them with what they need and not what we think that they need. And instead of us giving solutions to others, our role when supporting others is to provide the environment where they can look for what their solutions are themselves. My work with resilience really has made me a very action-oriented professional. I work both in my work as a therapist, but also in my work with mental health and psychosocial support consulting. I work at looking at what are the problems that are there and how do you, whether you as an individual or in groups, how do you, what actions are you going to take to change the situation so that you can improve your situation? I also have developed, I think, skills of really using participatory methods a lot. So a lot of my work, whether as a teacher or as a trainer or as a psychologist, is always about including the people and making sure that whoever I'm working with have a chance to voice their opinions. The reason I introduce that is because that's really what we're going to do today. Our plan is to talk about the challenges and the new demands that we, and especially students and young people, are facing now after COVID has started, especially that we are all working online. I could have prepared a whole presentation on what my opinion was, but I thought instead I would apply the skills that I usually do and ask you to participate, and so that we can have a discussion around what these challenges are and how to address them. So we're going to work through these three questions. The first question is, what are the challenges or the new demands that we, and especially young people, are facing today related to digital use and online behavior? So we're going to examine some different categories of challenges together. And then after that, we'll look specifically at what are the signs and symptoms of distress, especially of young people, to look out for. And the third question we'll look at is, what can I individually, or what can we as a community do to manage and cope with these challenges better? Because for most of us, the challenges that we're facing due to the COVID crisis are likely to stay for quite a while. Pernille has offered to help by reading up the responses. So the way it's going to work is that I'm going to ask the question, and I'd really like to invite you to give some of your comments in the chat box. So the first question is, what are the challenges and the new demands that we are facing today related to digital use and online behavior? And these are the 5 categories. I thought we could split them up in so that we can structure our responses a little. First is, what are the academic and the cognitive challenges? If you're not familiar with the word cognitive, it's what's happening in the mind, in the brain. Then what are the physical challenges that we're facing? What are the social challenges, the emotional, and the spiritual also? All right, so I think we're just going to get started with that. Let me hear from you, and I'm going to stop sharing for now. Let me hear from some of you. What are some of the academic or cognitive challenges that young people are facing at the moment? So please write your answers in the chat, or if you prefer to speak, you can also unmute yourself. But I think you may have to raise your hand then first.
So, Pernille, we do have a comment from Tracy. She said too much screen time, when usually we as adults try and limit the use of screens. There's another comment from Mahelo, access to technology.
As in, many people don't have access to technology, is that right? Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
So too much screen time, because we as adults try and limit our children to how much screen time they have, and then the access to technology issue right now.
Right. Let's see what other responses are coming in.
Yeah. Premature access to information, not connecting live with their friends, so social aspects.
Let me just pause on the premature access to information. You mean by, because now they're online and they're seeing things that perhaps they shouldn't be, but we can't control it. I'd imagine that was...
Yeah, I believe that could be it.
Yeah, yep. Sorry, that was my comment. I think that you can control as much as you can from where you sit as a parent, but in truth, unless you are sitting next to somebody 24 hours a day, you really don't know what they encounter, and often probably before they should be encountering specific things.
Right, and it's impossible to monitor that.
That's
Great,
right.
Look, there's a lot of more. If you could read those up, Pernille, that would be helpful.
Okay, all right. Let me continue. So basically, I see something regarding to too much information, lack of being able to concentrate or focus, issues of privacy, you know, missing the classroom experience, which is again a social issue. And I think, yes, also things like, for example, no social feedback from peers. So again, the lack of interaction, personal interaction. And definitely information overload, which is too much info coming in again. So I think the key things really are around the social aspect or the lack of it, the exposure to too much information, and the inability to stay focused on what you're online for.
Right.
Yes, and definitely the early damage to eyesight, the health aspect. Yes, that's important.
I see a comment also from Sarah about ability to concentrate. So it also not only eyesight, but also the fact that we're spending so much time in front of the screen.
Exactly.
Right, missing the classroom experience, I think that's really important also in terms of academic. A lot of these are intermixed with the others, with the physical, social, emotional. But I think so far we've got some really great examples, and there are some more coming around physical. Let's move to physical. What are some of the physical challenges and new demands? So I see some of you have mentioned already, not enough physical activity. Anything else?
I think again, the fact that you get distracted is coming up quite often as well. You know, through too much exposure to adverts and other things you hadn't planned on looking at.
Right.
Yeah.
And Therese shared a point about poor sleep patterns. That's exactly right. I think for many are experiencing that this online interaction and being in front of the screen, it's actually really exhausting, and it disturbs our brain in a way that we're not used to. So a lot of people are struggling with sleep at the moment. Also a problem is sometimes that, at least in my house sometimes, the children or the young people are staying up quite late because they don't have to get up and go to school so early. They can really pitch up to class at 8 o'clock, so they stay up a little bit too late, which is makes it also, the patterns get disturbed.
So I think, Pernille, I'd be keen to just understand from, you know, the guests around the room as to maybe what are some of the practices they're putting in place to limit the usage of screen time, or to make the usage of screen time more productive, as a productive engagement rather than just.
So we'll come to that at the end, Aliwa, when we talk about what actions to do. Okay, we've talked a little about physical challenges. What about social challenges? You've mentioned that people are not, the young people are not having contact with their peers. The same with us adults also. We were all missing our friends. What other impacts do you think this is having? Yael says it's having, there's bullying going on. Do you want to expand that a little bit, Yael? Is that around online bullying, or you're welcome to unmute yourself and contribute? Yael, do you want to expand the point about bullying? No. That definitely, by being online and having only... Okay, go ahead, Yael.
No, I'm just saying it's the risk for bullying. I'm sorry, I don't have Wi-Fi, so I'm on my cell phone. Obviously, there is the exposure for bullying. There is the easiest that bullying can happen. There is also this expand of it. Like, I mean, you know, online bullying can reach so many places, so quickly, and like when it's happened at school on the ground. So all the aspects of bullying.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And there's a comment from Therese about poor communication in the family setting. I think for many families also, this is an unprecedented situation where suddenly many families are forced to be together 24 hours, and they're not used to that. We're used to having an opportunity to have some time away from each other, to experience things outside of the home and come home and share them. Now we are forced to be in the same space. That's really intense. So that can be really difficult.
Yeah, and I think also, Pernille, there was another comment about children having to be personally responsible for themselves and their learning.
So the responsibility in the household and the responsibility on young people is changing, perhaps. And then Louisa mentions also changing your relationship. Your relationships are changing because you don't have those interactions. And for example, interactions... Bianca, please put your computer on mute. And then, of course, missing friends. I think that's probably the most important impact for the teenagers, for young people, is that they're not able to be together with their peers. And this is not only just missing being with them, but you all remember, if you're not a teenager and you're on this call, that it was a really important time where your whole identity is around being with your friends. Right, the next one is emotional. What are some of the emotional challenges, do you think, that young people are facing right now? And a lot of them are actually reactions to the things that you've shared here. Okay, Donnie's mentioning a change is a responsibility for household work and younger siblings and daily academics, so that the responsibilities for the young people are rising. Therese says that children resort to Netflix and games since they have nowhere to go. So again, more screen. So not only are we on the screens to go to school, but when we're trying to relax and not be at school, we're also using screens. Okay, so Bongani shares that one emotional reaction or one emotional challenge is loneliness. Definitely. Sorry, I'm taking over your job, Aliwa, go ahead.
No, actually, there's also quite a comment about the anxiety about the future, uncertainty, which I think is weighing heavily on just everybody in general, because we all don't know what the future actually holds. And another similar comment has come through about, you know, the world being an evil place with all the negativity. So these are serious concerns.
Absolutely. So some common emotions are fear. Fear and anxiety, because we don't know what's happening also. And Zahara adds also lack of motivation. we talked about that just recently, her and I, that when you're not with your classmates, when you're not in the same room as them, it's really difficult to be motivated to do your work in the same way that you did before. Any other emotional challenges that people are facing? Or new demands? So Loiso says it impacts the retarded social interaction impacts our ability to comprehend and navigate. Are you talking about social relations, Loiso?
Sorry, yeah, it impacts your ability, one, to understand what the issue is, because you are relating through technology, so your ability to really understand the issues, and then to figure out what you should or shouldn't do at an age appropriate level to respond.
Right. Thank you. And Therese mentions it can lead to poor self-esteem, and especially for those who can't cope with a new way of learning. Absolutely. Absolutely. These are new challenges, and a lot of us didn't know at all how to adapt to this new world and how to learn in this way. So that definitely can impact them in that way. Okay, thanks. Let's look at the last category, which is spiritual. What are some of the new demands that people may be feeling spiritually? Or challenges? One, for example, is, I know that, I mean, for some people who usually practice spirituality through going to church, for example, have been unable to do that. So they're not in the same community if you practice a certain religion. Or any other thoughts on what are some of the impacts on our spiritual well-being? What are some of the challenges? Spirituality is also very closely related to hope. To hope and positivity.
Yeah, I think also, Pernille, with the spirituality aspect is that churches or religious institutions have attempted to also make themselves available digitally. But how is that, for example, as an experience for you, engaging spiritually digitally versus in being at church and being with other people? Has it impacted you in that way as well, positively or otherwise?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks.
So we've got some comments coming through. Your faith is tested, definitely, and it can tie back to the issue of uncertainty about the future. You know, people are questioning their faith. Again, it's the faith being tested. And there's a comment from Stephen about feeling that things are out of control. I guess because there's no sort of anchor, you know, that you're recreating your spiritual, Lois has said, you're recreating your spiritual engagement proxy if it was physical church and institution. Yeah.
So perhaps you have to move church home. And do what you used to do that was important for you in church, and then instead do it at home. Right.
Because some people have tried to keep the same time and have the same routine they would have had if they were physically going to church. So, but for some, it's not easy. Some people's faith is definitely being challenged.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Thanks very much for your contributions to that first question around what the challenges are. And I think it's clear from your contributions that it is really a difficult time at the moment. I mean, I think we could comfortably say that globally, the levels of distress have gone up within the mental health, with the focus on mental health. So with all these challenges, some people are going to manage them well, and others are not going to manage them as well. There are so many factors that influence how we manage our situations and how we manage our challenges. So, for example, the very first thing that impacts how you manage something is how severe the negative consequences are. Another thing that impacts how you react or manage things are your age, and of course your support system, whether you have a good support system within your family, with your friends and your school. And other things that impact how you manage it are also your personal resources. We're not going to talk so much more about that because I want to move on to the next question, which is this one. What are the signs and symptoms of distress in young people to look out for? Now, why should we do that? Why should we have this question? It's so important for us to, because some people do manage it well and some people don't manage it well, it's so important for us when we're trying to help and support our young people that we're able to recognize when they're not doing well. So the question asks you to think of both general signs and symptoms of when teenagers are not doing well, but also specifically related to this situation. What could be some examples of a young person not doing so well that is related to somehow their online use or their digital behavior? So again, I'd like to have some of your contributions. Please write in the chat. So we're looking at signs and symptoms of distress. What would be indicators that your child or your friend, young person is not doing well? Bongani mentions if the young person is impatient and irritable, yeah. Lack of hygiene, Tracy says, so unable to look after yourself, unable to function well. Do you want to read them, Pernille? They're coming quite fast now.
Sure. You know, sleeping more than usual, for example. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sleeping more than usual, you know, erratic or dramatic change in behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So far, I think that's it. Not adjusting to routines, not looking after personal appearance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that is an issue.
Mm-hmm.
I would say negative comments on posts,
Mm-hmm.
reluctance to communicate, so they isolate, you know, they're silence, they're just lethargic. Some
Mm-hmm.
have a temper even.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, inability to get off the device.
Right.
So their hands are glued to their phones. Definitely things like change in diet, basic disinterest. So I think it's really all the signs that you would see from a person who just seems to have given up, you know, or just doesn't have something to look forward to, that lack of motivation.
Mm-hmm.
Changes in diet, just being overall disinterested in something, not
Right.
have that anchor beam that they look forward to.
Great. So there are many, many different reactions, and I see also more anxiety about grades and results. Someone who doesn't share or open their device is hiding. A lot of these signs and symptoms that you're describing are also what we call in the mental health field normal reactions to an abnormal situation. But some of them, and a lot of the signs and symptoms, if a young person is showing them only one or two of them and only for a short period of time, then it shouldn't really worry you. It's more worrisome when they start, the signs and symptoms persist, or they start building up, so that a young person is both, there's a change in diet, they're perhaps not sleeping or perhaps sleeping too much and suffering from anxiety and perhaps lying. I've made a little list here of some of the more worrisome signs. These are some of the things that if these signs come up, then it really is inviting you to do something to support your young person. So one is major changes in behavior, unable to sleep, start seeming confused or disorientated, someone who's not able to function normally and care for themselves. For example, they don't eat or drink well, not keeping clean, often staying in bed all day. I wrote often because at the moment, I think since we started the online learning, some students have had a lot of bed days. Another worrisome sign is, of course, if they isolate themselves completely from others, if they start lying, truancy or stealing, so risky behavior, if they start losing control over their behavior and are unpredictable or aggressive, and of course, if they threaten to or already do harm themselves, and if they start using drugs or drinking alcohol. Are there any that have not been mentioned that anyone can think of? Okay, let's go on to the last question then, which is now we've looked at all the challenges that they're facing, and there are lots of them. And we've also looked at what are some signs and symptoms that you need to be aware of and act on if the young people in your life are showing some of these signs and symptoms. Now, the last question is around what can we do, both as individuals, but also as a community, to manage and cope with these challenges better? So in preparing for this call, I came up with a list of ideas, and I actually discussed them with my daughter, Zahara, who's on the call today also. And I thought that her comments and responses to some of the ideas that I had were quite interesting. So I've invited her to join us on the call and to share her opinion of my ideas, and also use that perhaps as a reminder to when we as parents have ideas for what to do. It's so important that we ask our children also what they think of it. Sorry, I have a very loud dog in the background. Okay, the first action that, and I was thinking especially around what are things that we as parents or as adults can do to support our young people, but it could also be around young people supporting each other as peers. Sorry about the dog. So the first one was around setting a good example. I think in every home there's a situation of looking at your phone and going, hey, put your phone down. It's dinner time now. It's not time to use the phone, and not doing it yourselves. So setting a good example, and perhaps making some rules at home around when it's screen time and when to shut the screens down, and to practice what you preach, essentially. Zahara, are you in the call?
Yeah.
Okay, great. What were your thoughts about that one?
Well, I agreed with that one, because I think that if, for example, you tell me that I'm not allowed to have my phone at the dinner table, or that I'm not allowed to be on my phone while you're talking to me, and then if you're on your phone at the dinner table, or you're on your phone while I'm talking to you, then it feels like, well, why do I have to do it if you're not doing it?
Right.
So yeah.
So and the second one was around showing interest. Be interested in what the students, be interested in what the children, what are they doing on their digital devices, so that you can also get an insight into what their interests are. So I had an example. For example, if Zahara's sitting looking at her phone and she suddenly starts laughing, be interested and go up and say, hey, what are you laughing at? What did you think of that one, Zahara?
I thought that in particular, of if I'm laughing at something on my phone and you come and say, oh, what are you laughing at? Let me see. That would either make me annoyed at you or make it not funny anymore. Okay. If it were funny and I thought you'd find it funny, then I would show it to you on my own. It feels a bit invasive of my funny joke. Okay.
So what you're saying is I need to trust that if you want to share it with me, you will.
Yes.
Okay, the other thing I thought was it's good when your children are on different platforms, join the platform. So if your child is on Instagram, follow them on Instagram so that you can see what they're doing. Isn't that okay, Zahara?
Yeah, it is. But I also think with that, when it comes to showing interest, you also need to make sure that your children don't feel personally invaded. So if you follow me, that's fine. I don't have anything to hide. If I said, no, you can't follow me, then you would be worried that I'm hiding something. Mm-hmm. But I don't mind you following me, but with different people, there might be different boundaries that they want to put in place for you as a parent, as their follower. So for example, I wouldn't want you commenting on my friends' comments on my posts. I don't know why, it's just, yeah, that sort of thing.
It's a bit creepy. Okay, so show interest, but discuss with your peers or discuss with your children how that's going to work so that you don't make them uncomfortable. Another point is to discuss the risks of being online. And I think that's really important that we as adults and children just are constantly aware of what the different risks are. Don't you agree, Zee?
Yes, but also there are some things that we already know about online safety and good online behavior, because for example, in my Form 3 IT class, we are learning about different things about how to stay safe online and how to be sure that you're not putting out the wrong information and things like that.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying that I might learn something from you about the risks. Okay, so have conversations with your children because they probably are more tech savvy than you are about the different risks online. Another point is around taking responsibility as adults when we give our children devices to use, that we take responsibility and make sure that they have access to the security that they need so that they can engage online safely. My next point was around educating yourself, and that I was referring specifically around the signs and the symptoms of distress, which we covered today, but also just to stay alert and in front of all the different developments around online behavior. And the last was around self-care, that a good way, of course, of taking care of our young people is also to take care of ourselves first. What about, do you have other ideas of what we can do to manage these challenges that we're facing? So again, remember that the focus is on managing the challenges because we're unlikely to make them magically disappear. What other things do you think that we can do to manage all of these challenges we're facing? Right, so there's a comment from Stephen.
Yes, so Stephen's comment says we must exercise. And I think goes for both students and parents, you know, or everybody. We must get out and get a new perspective on life. So it's not all doom and gloom. We must communicate. And then there's something from Eleanor also. And then there's a comment from Donovan. It says, as a teacher, set realistic deadlines and amount of work. So again, it's sort of the SMART goals or SMART objectives. Be realistic. Yeah, those are the comments right now, Pernille.
Okay, great. We're very close to the end now. Other examples of self-care especially are these that I've listed here. Peer support, talk to friends, family, colleagues about how you're feeling. These apply both to adults and to young people. Try to socialize in new ways, exercise, rest and sleep well, eat and drink healthy, avoid using alcohol or substances to cope, and do things that you really enjoy and ask for help when you need it. Great, so we have had a really short time to go through all these things, but that's it from me. I think we have about 10 minutes left for any Q&A. Thank you very much for your attention so far.
Thanks, Pernille. There was a comment as well to ask for help. And I think generally, naturally, we're quite reluctant to, reach out and ask for help. Yet there's so much support in the form of yourself, for example, who can be approached for help. The school also has a strong support system, and students and staff can reach out to get assistance, and that's why I said earlier in my opening remarks that we're encouraging all of you to please share any resources or material that can benefit all of us as we embark on this, intense digital online presence. Yeah. Let me see. Okay. Eleanor, I've noted your comments. Thank you.
And in that respect, we'd also like to hear what focus areas in our preparation for the future Digitalks within the PSA, we'd like to hear what topics you'd like us to get speakers on. Loiso mentions that a high level of presence is required from parents at the moment during this time, which is not always possible, which is really difficult because it's actually the opposite of what the reality is, especially if parents are having to go to work and leaving children at home and not being able to supervise them.
Yeah, so I think also, Pernille, from just, the comments that were received, the issues for future talk, issues around managing time management, of usage of digital device, personal responsibility. We're giving you a phone, not just because we want you to be accessible for online learning, but we need to be able to reach you when we need to reach you. And they also need to be able to reach us when they need to reach us. So as an example, I always make sure my daughter's phone has enough airtime loaded for any emergency. So it's that kind of personal responsibility. We need to look at matters around esteem, and really, I think, to also address the issue around this uncertainty about the future, Pernille, because it came out again with regards to anxiety around, grades and results, them being online and their performance. So there are quite a number of, I think, follow-up Digitalk series topics that we can look at. The issues of motivation, issues of faith, all the things that have been raised today have really been great. There's a comment also from Yael regarding, I'd like to talk about issues around sexuality and pornography, and tools that parents can use to moderate that. Do you block certain sites or what? Then there's also a comment again from Lois. So there's a high level of self-awareness asked from students. There's a level of responsibility you're placing on them, which they may not be ready for, which is quite true.
So back to the point around responsibility.
Yeah. And I think also another common theme was around health, not just the eyesight aspect, but everything, your posture, your constant exposure to just being in one position all the time. And I guess that's what prompted the issue of physical exercise. And, let's get our eyes examined. Some of us really already are, I don't know what lens I'm at, because it's changing day by day, depending on how often I'm online. So yeah, I think it's been quite an interesting conversation.
I think Mary has her hand up. Go ahead, Mary.
Okay, thanks. Hi, everybody. I'm sorry my video's off, but my internet's been quite unstable today.
That's fine. You've got a beautiful picture there, Malalocha.
Lovely to see the familiar faces. That was great. And thanks, Pernille. I just wanted to share that I think what helps our own children and our students who become like our children as well is to give them a toolbox of strategies. And even for scenarios that you think they might never face, or you hope that they will never face, if you discuss with them strategies, or you tell them how you might react to a situation, you know, then they may feel a little bit more comfortable to approach you on a certain issue. Of course, even better if you can model the strategy, you know, by saying, so this is what I do when I'm feeling stressed, you know, I break my day into pieces. Sometimes I do it 1 hour at a time, etc. So if you can model the strategies, even better. But I think sometimes having those discussions, even about issues that you sincerely hope they will never face, it can just open the door and let them know that it's actually okay to talk about this. Or, you know, children often think their parents are going to be really angry when they do something wrong, and most of the time they're not angry. They're very, very supportive and very understanding. So I think sometimes having those conversations helps, and to try to give them a toolbox that they can fall back on, supposing they were to face the dreaded scenario that you hope they're never going to face.
Right. So really what you're encouraging, especially Mary, is creating a safe space for communicating about it and having conversations with our kids about the risks and how to address them.
Yes, yes, yeah.
Thank you very much for that. We are so happy about all the stuff that they're learning in IT at school. I mean, I thought it was great to hear from Zahara that she was like, I probably know a lot more about this than you do, Mom. And that was good for me. I was happy to hear that. And I think that they do. So it would be good for us to have conversations, also to check in whether our young people do know the risks and they know also how to protect themselves from them.
Yeah, well, one thing I know for sure, Pernille, is that my classroom is a knowledge share. It's definitely not a one-way transaction. The children teach me lots of things. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Thanks so much for that.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments, as we've just got a couple of minutes left? Either about the Digitalks, or if you have any questions to the PSA, or you have any questions to me personally, this is your chance. Okay, great. I think if we don't have any more questions, Eliwe, I think you're muted, my dear.
Sorry, not so much questions, Pernille, just comments, positive commentary, and appreciation for the Digitalk series and your presentation.
Great.
So I'm wondering, maybe with that, should we maybe just share our closing remarks? There's a comment. I do think that there's some parents who do not know how to manage some of the issues. They go against what they may consider to be appropriate. This needs help and support. Thank you for that comment. We'll note it. Yeah. And I think I'd just like to also say, Zahara, we appreciate your participation. You've given us a bit of the toolbox strategies that Mary has mentioned without knowing it. So I've already picked up something from what you said. So I appreciate you joining us. Thank you so much. Then Dr. Pernille, it's mostly thank yous from the audience. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you everyone for joining us. It's really been a pleasure. And join the next Digitalks.
Yes. Thank you so much. Have a lovely evening and see you next time.
Great.
Bye.